Where are you being asked to take a faithful step? Even if maybe it means walking alone for a while.
Yeah.
It's quite a question, isn't it? Really gets you thinking about conviction and, well, the courage needed to live it out.
Welcome to this deep dive. We're exploring some really profound insights today about navigating life's biggest choices. We're looking at some timeless wisdom that speaks right to the heart of, how we can walk through our days with real purpose and conviction.
Yeah, it's about a specific kind of journey, this walk we're talking about.
Mm.
One that's often challenging, no doubt, but is said to lead to a life filled with, well, blessing and genuine purpose.
Right. It's about how our choices, especially the tough ones, actually shape our path.
So let's unpack this a bit. There's this word obedience that comes up. What does it really mean in this context? Because, for a lot of people, that sounds rigid, like heavy demands. But the wisdom we're looking at seems to describe it very differently.
That's a great point. And what's fascinating is that it's not presented as like a one-time big decision, not just a single yes or no. Instead, it's framed as more of a daily rhythm of faith.
A rhythm. Like,
Yeah, like an ongoing practice, consistency in our steps, day by day. Not a sudden achievement, but a continuous movement.
so it's definitely a journey then, not just flipping a switch.
Exactly.
What does that kind of journey often require from us? Especially when, the path isn't clear, when things feel uncertain.
Well, that leads to a really important aspect. This path often takes courage, a lot of courage, actually, especially when it feels unfamiliar or maybe lonely because you're stepping away from the crowd, or even when your choices are just unpopular. It's often called the road less traveled for a reason, right? It means moving away from what's easy or conventional.
Okay, so if it demands that kind of courage, stepping onto that less traveled road,
Mm.
these principles, these commands as they're sometimes called, they are meant to be just burdens then. They must lead somewhere meaningful.
Precisely. That's the core insight here. This wisdom suggests God's guidance isn't burdensome at all. Think of them more like guideposts.
Guideposts.
Yeah, like markers on a trail. They're there to lead towards blessing, towards protection, towards purpose. They're meant to lead us to life, not restrict it.
That reframes it completely. Not restrictions, but directions towards something better.
Exactly. Like that ancient wisdom says, walk this way so that you may live and prosper and prolong your days. It's about flourishing.
Okay, that sounds beautiful in theory. But let's get real for a moment. Where does the rubber meet the road? What kind of challenges, what actual costs might someone face when they choose to walk this path? Because it can't always be easy.
No, absolutely not. And the insights we're drawing from don't shy away from that. The path can be difficult. It can
Yeah.
feel intensely lonely and just plain hard sometimes. It might mean sacrificing things that look like huge opportunities.
Like what, for example?
Well, maybe a major sponsorship deal, something that promises fame or financial security, or even walking away from a stable family business.
Oh, okay.
It could mean starting over completely, maybe with very little money or support. Leaving the familiar behind, that's a real cost.
That sounds incredibly daunting. And I think having some real-life examples really helps to grasp this tension, doesn't it, between the cost and the faithfulness.
It does. And we have a couple of powerful stories that illustrate this perfectly.
So let's take that college athlete in Texas back in 2022. Here she is presented with a massive sponsorship opportunity. The kind of deal most athletes only dream about. Could set her up for life.
A life-changing offer on the surface. But then she digs a little deeper. She finds out the company's mission, their practices. They clash directly with her core values, her faith.
Ah, okay, so a real conflict there.
A huge conflict.
Yeah.
Choosing between basically financial security and public recognition on one hand, and her spiritual integrity on the other. And she even said, it felt like I was giving up everything. You can just imagine the weight of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But she also knew deep down in her spirit, as she put it, that it just wasn't right for her.
So what happened? Did she walk away?
She did. She made that incredibly tough call to turn it down.
Wow. And the outcome?
Well, about a year later, in 2023, the story goes that she received another offer, an even greater platform, actually. And this time, it was with an organization that was perfectly aligned with her beliefs.
No kidding.
Yeah, it's presented almost as, proof that obedience, that faithfulness, it might cost you big time in the short term,
Right.
but that faithfulness is ultimately honored. Maybe not how or when we expect, but it is.
That's a powerful illustration. And there's another one, right, from a different context.
Yes, equally powerful. Think about a new believer in Nigeria. He finds himself in a situation where his family's business,
Okay.
which is his livelihood, his security, maybe generations of tradition. He realizes it's rooted in unethical practices.
Oh boy, that's tough. Family business is complicated.
Very. He could have just kept quiet, right?
Right.
Maintained the status quo, kept the peace, kept the income. But his conscience, this newfound faith, wouldn't let him.
So he faced a similar choice, essentially. Comfort versus conviction.
Exactly. And his decision meant leaving that established business behind.
Just walking away.
Just walking away. Starting over with hardly any money and likely very little support from his family, who probably thought he was crazy.
That's a massive, massive sacrifice, risking everything familiar.
Huge risk. Yet the story tells us that through connections he made in his local ministry, he found new work. And maybe just as importantly, he found a new community. People who understood and supported his choice.
That sense of belonging.
Right, and he described it himself. He said it was not the easy road, clearly,
No doubt.
but it was the honest one. And then he said something really profound. God has walked it with me every step.
That feeling of not being truly alone, even when it looks like you are.
Precisely, that echoes this whole idea.
So when you look at these two stories, side by side, the athlete, the businessman, very different situation.
Very different. Different continents, different pressures.
But there's a clear common thread, isn't there?
Absolutely. Both faced immediate loss, real, tangible difficulty. Both chose a path that led away from what looked like comfort or success by worldly standards.
They took that road less traveled.
They did. But the key is what happened next. Both eventually found this deep sense of alignment. They found unexpected support. They gained this inner integrity that, money couldn't buy.
Yeah.
Their journeys really show that faithfulness, even when it feels like it costs everything, it gets honored, often in surprising ways. It leads to something richer, more authentic.
It seems like losing what you thought you needed opened the door to what actually fulfilled them.
Well put. That's exactly the sense you get.
Okay, so building on these examples, what are the ultimate outcomes promised for walking this path? If someone takes these courageous, sometimes lonely steps, what does this wisdom say awaits them?
The promises are pretty significant. Despite all the challenges we've talked about, this path is consistently described as leading to deep blessing, to protection, and to a real sense of purpose.
Blessing, protection, purpose?
Yes. The texts talk about it resulting in life, prosperity, and prolonged days. Now, that's not just about, material wealth. It's bigger than that. It implies a fullness of life, inner peace, lasting fulfillment, that alignment we talked about.
Flourishing existence.
Exactly, like that verse in Deuteronomy captures. Walk in obedience so that you may live and prosper. There's a direct link being made.
And it feels like the impact isn't just contained to the person walking that path, right?
Yeah.
It seems to spread outward.
You're absolutely right. When someone follows this guidance wholeheartedly, their footsteps are said to leave a legacy.
A legacy.
Yeah, not just for themselves, but for everyone watching, for the next generation. It creates this ripple effect. One person's life lived with that kind of conviction becomes this powerful example, an influence for others, a living testament, really.
So even with the short-term costs, the potential hardship, the feeling of maybe walking alone, the ultimate destination described here is pretty clear.
Very clear. The ultimate outcome, the thread woven through all these insights, is that this path always leads to the kind of life that is genuinely blessed.
Always. That's a strong word.
It is. It's presented as a core promise, a life that's honored, guided, filled with a kind of peace and integrity that, frankly, worldly success often can't touch.
It might not be the easy path, but it's profoundly worthwhile.
That's the essence of it.
So the wisdom we've explored today, it really brings us back to that initial thought. Obedience, faithfulness. It might feel costly. It often demands real courage, maybe even loneliness for a time, but it consistently points towards a life that is truly blessed in the deepest sense.
It really encourages us, doesn't it, to just keep stepping forward in faith, trusting that that divine direction, that inner compass guided by these principles, it always leads towards life, towards what's good and true.
So we end where we began, really, with that question for you, for your own heart, your own journey. Where are you being asked to take a faithful step, even if it means walking alone for a while?
Something to really consider as you continue on your own path. Let that question sit with you, perhaps guide your next steps with purpose and conviction.